The month is September 1944, and the Battle of Arakkor is raging. The German 5th Panzer Army faces off against the U.S. 4th Armored Division, with German forces exceeding those of the Americans. While U.S. forces possess air superiority, the Germans hold an advantage in gun range. A dense fog envelops the battlefield, creating an even playing field. Concealed by the fog, German Panthers have advanced toward the U.S. headquarters, effectively pinning down the Americans. Major Charles Carpenter, an observation pilot, takes flight in his Piper L-4 Grasshopper from a nearby field. The Grasshopper, a lightweight aircraft constructed with fabric, stretched over a steel frame, has a maximum speed of only 85 miles per hour. Crucial for reconnaissance during the push through Europe, these spotter planes identified hidden German armor frequently positioned in ambush, causing significant disruptions for the Allies as they advanced through France toward Germany. However, on this particular day, the fog also obscures Charles's view of the ground below. Around midday, the fog and low-lying clouds that have blanketed the battlefield begin to dissipate. It is at this precise moment, through the thinning mist, that Carpenter spots several German Panther tanks advancing in the direction of Arakkor. Without any hesitation, Carpenter swiftly turns his slow-moving aircraft and initiates a dive toward the German tanks below. Charles's actions on this day would cement his and his Grasshopper's place in history. This is not just any ordinary Piper L-4. This Grasshopper has teeth. Equipped with 6 bazookas, 3 mounted beneath each wing, this diminutive aircraft packs a considerable punch and has been affectionately nicknamed Rosie the Rocketer. Back in the cockpit, Charles is in control. He has installed a custom panel on the console featuring 6 switches, each corresponding to a bazooka. Charles has the option to activate each one individually or unleash a simultaneous salvo of all 6 if the situation demands it. Charles is aware that the armor on the upper surfaces of the German tanks is relatively thin, reaching a maximum of only 45 millimeters on the heaviest tanks. With each bazooka capable of penetrating up to 99 millimeters of armor, Rosie is more than capable of delivering a devastating blow to the unsuspecting tank crews below. Putting the plane into a steep dive, Charlie activates 2 switches on his customized panel. A brief burst of smoke accompanies the electrical ignition of the charge, propelling the rocket toward its intended target, a German Panther below. Impacting the turret and unleashing a torrent of molten shrapnel inside, the Iron Beast sputters and grinds to a halt, its mission terminated. Pulling back on the control stick to pull out of the dive, Carpenter allows himself a brief moment of satisfaction as he evades the barrage of small arms fire now erupting around Rosie. Typically, the Germans avoid firing at spotter planes to conceal their positions, but realizing that this pilot is not flying the usual harmless Grasshopper, they desperately attempt to shoot down the escaping aircraft. Carpenter does not venture far. Regaining altitude, he pushes forward once again to align himself with his next target. This time, the Germans are prepared, and Rosie does not entirely escape the hail of bullets. Undeterred, Charles takes out his second target of the day, leaving another Panther disabled in the field. Despite the intense fire from the ground, Carpenter expended all his rockets and returned to base, leaving destruction in his wake. Upon landing, Carpenter refueled and rearmed Rosie, took off once more, and returned to the column. The Germans were waiting and directed everything they had at Charles and Rosie. Charles executed several attack runs, utilizing his entire complement of rockets, and then, incredibly, returned to base, rearmed, refueled, and engaged the Germans for a third time. The Grasshopper, constructed of fabric stretched over a metal frame, possessed exceptional lift for its size. Consequently, it could withstand multiple hits from small arms fire, and as long as vital components such as the pilot or engine remained untouched, the plane could endure holes in the wings or fuselage. Having destroyed or immobilized several tanks and armored vehicles, the remaining panzers were compelled to retreat, and Charles determined that he had done enough for one day. In an interview with Stars and Stripes magazine, Charles expressed that his approach to war was to attack relentlessly. When questioned about the enemy's perspective of Charles, he responded that word must be circulating to be cautious of cubs armed with bazookas. Every time I show up now, they shoot with everything they have. They never used to bother cubs. Bazookas must be bothering them a bit. Not confined to aerial combat, Charles was also familiar with ground engagements. Near Branches, while Carpenter was scouting landing sites, his unit was ambushed by Germans and found themselves under attack. With the U.S. forces struggling to survive, Charles realized the battle was turning against them. Consumed by battle rage, he mounted a Sherman tank and seized control of a .50 caliber machine gun. Targeting enemy positions, Charles fervently urged the American troops to attack and advance. Inspired by the mad Major shouting encouragement atop the Sherman, the Americans triumphed, driving back the German forces. Perhaps a bit too enthusiastically, Charles continued firing, inadvertently striking an American Sherman bulldozer tank. His shots sheared off the tank's bulldozer blade, leading to his arrest for perceived recklessness. Facing the potential of a firing squad, his life hung in the balance until his commanding officer intervened. In an improbable turn of events, General Patton himself rescued Charles from court-martial. Patton rebuked his men for arresting Charles and, instead of punishing him, awarded the Major the Silver Star for bravery, stating that Carpenter embodied the kind of fighting spirit he desired in his army. The press seized upon the tale of the Mad Major, and his fame soared. During an interview, he told reporters, "Some people around here think I'm nuts, but I just believe that if we're going to fight a war, we have to get on with it, 60 minutes an hour and 24 hours a day." By the end of the war, Charles had remarkably knocked out 14 tanks, but was officially credited with 6 destroyed tanks, including 2 of the formidable Tiger Ys. In recognition of his actions, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel. In 1945, Carpenter received a diagnosis of Hodgkin's disease and was honorably discharged from service with a prognosis of only 2 years to live. He resumed his career as a high school history teacher in Illinois and defied the doctor's predictions, passing away in 1966. As for Rosie, she survived the war. In 1946, she was abandoned in a German surplus yard, and her bazookas were removed. Repainted in civilian colors and resold to owners in Switzerland and Austria, she became a flying club plane. Just another Piper. Eventually, she ended up gathering dust in the Österreichisches Luftfahrtmuseum, her storied past completely forgotten. Remarkably, in 2017, Rosie was located. Recognizing her historical significance, she was acquired by the Collings Foundation and brought to the U.S., where she is currently undergoing restoration. The foundation is nearing completion of the restoration and has returned Rosie to her original configuration. The Rosie the Rocketer artwork adorning the side of the Grasshopper is an exact replica of the original. It was painted by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Carpenter's granddaughter, Erin. We eagerly anticipate seeing Rosie take to the skies once more in the near future. Special thanks to War History Online for providing the details for this story. Visit War History Online for the latest updates on Rosie and other fascinating news and events from war history. Please share your thoughts on our videos in the comments below and feel free to like,